All right, there he is now. Sir, very happy to have you on the podcast. As I just told you real quick, big admirer of your work and your words, and excited to fire 1,000 questions at you, or however many I can get in.
Let's do it.
You grew up in West Virginia, and I would like to know about your childhood and what that was like there, because I really want to get to a little bit about how that state has changed politically and culturally.
Well, I grew up in southern West Virginia. I mean, I'm what you would consider a holler boy. Didn't have much in terms of, what you can do in a small town in Logan County, West Virginia. Everything was coal mining. That was pretty much the only profession that there was. And as I was growing up, when I was in high school, my counselor told me, "You're going to be a coal miner." I said, "No, I don't want to be a coal miner," because my family members were all coal miners. And they all said, "Don't go into the coal industry because it's feast or famine." But my counselor told me that it didn't matter what I thought. I was going to be a coal miner. But when I graduated high school, it was basically dig coal, sell dope, or join the Army. And I chose to join the Army. And that's what I did. And I was very happy to get the hell out of here. And of course, after 24 years in the military, I returned and ended up, getting into politics, not because I wanted to be a politician, because I couldn't stand politicians. If a politician shook my hand, I wanted to quickly Purell up. But, I looked around and I saw these politicians with their hands in the cookie jar, and they didn't do nothing for the people. So I started challenging them. So that's what happened. Of course, they almost murdered me, but hey, it was what it was.
Did they literally almost murder you?
I took a pipe to the back of the head and 8 broken bones in my face with brass knuckles 2 days before I won my state Senate race. I won my race from the emergency room in Charleston Area Medical Center.
That story made huge news. Did we get to the bottom of who did that and why they did it?
Well, we got who did it, but it was all a bunch of political corruption. The courthouse protected this guy. They ran real quick and accepted a plea deal in my absence that said that it was just a fist fight. I took a pipe to the back of the head. I can't blame the guy that I ran against to be behind this, but I can guarantee you that the people that wanted him to beat me were definitely behind this. He only did 5 months in jail, by the way, the guy who did it.
How are you physically doing now, mental and emotionally, based on that attack?
Oh, I have no issues. I'm a hard man to kill. I don't care. These people right here, I don't want to curse on your show or anything like that, but I'll tell you right now, they can all go to hell as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, if you don't want to curse, because you don't want to curse, but there's no, you curse all you want. So did you get any kind of threats? Did you have concern for you and your family during that campaign, or was that really shocked that had you seen that happen in any other kind of West Virginia politics?
Where I come from in West Virginia, politics is very, very, very dangerous. Look, at the end of the day, I got that mentality. I spent years in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm not worried about these wannabes around here. If that guy didn't catch me from behind, I'll tell you right now, it would have been a different situation.
Well, clearly that's exactly how I would attack you, to be fair to him. I mean, I wouldn't go for a fair fight.
Well, I mean, but who would? I knew that guy. I grew up with that guy. That's one of the problems is we grew up in the same holler together. This was all, this was all about this. And they were mad because, the guy that I was going after controlled this county with an iron fist. And you're not going to control me with an iron fist. I don't care who you are.
He's holding up, Richard held up like the money sign, all about this, referencing, that's what that was all about. That's the second time you said holler. I grew up in the holler and the holler boy. So what is that? That's like a reference to a neighborhood, a type of place?
Well, a holler is like if you're going through the mountains, it's that little road that you go, that's the valleys. Those are called hollers where we come from. And the truth is that these hollers are just as poor as any of the, the ghettos out there. I was fortunate when I was a kid. I had my father was in the medical industry, but we still lived up in the holler. But nobody really had everything, back in those days.
How poor is poor in West Virginia then and now?
Oh, goodness gracious. I will tell you that I can take you to places in my hometown right now where the kids have it worse than the kids I saw in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I've taken people through those areas right there. I've taken people from all over the world to those areas, Norway, Sweden, Japan. And at the end, they look at me and they say, we thought that America was supposed to be the greatest country. We had no clue that people lived like this.
What do you mean?
I'm talking about absolute pure poverty. I mean, if it wasn't for welfare, these people would starve to death. The drug epidemic has decimated our communities. We were the lab rats for the drug epidemic. I can take you literally 15 minutes from where I live right now to that small pharmacy in a place called Kermit that basically has less than 300 people in that community. And they passed over 9 million pain pills in 1 year.
Yeah. You're talking, when you say the drug epidemic, you mean specifically the opioid epidemic?
Opioids. We were the test rats.
Yeah.
We were the lab rats. They come down here. They captured emails of these people that were going around here telling these pharmacies and telling these doctors to give this instead of this. And the emails said, keep them coming, boys. They're eating them up like Doritos. You keep them making them and they keep taking them. That's what they did.
Yeah, and there's just so much, research and journalism on that. Great books and long form articles if anybody's interested in learning more about it. It's not like Richard's just spouting off. This is a horrific story that occurred to the people of West Virginia, and it was done pretty well planned out. And there's a lot of journalism, and obviously people have heard about the lawsuits. So the military, tell me about your military experience. 27 years. You
24.
rose to. Excuse me?
24 years in the Army. Yeah, I initially went in as an enlisted person because, once again, I graduated high school and didn't have nowhere else to go. Mm-hmm. So I went into the military and I loved it. I loved the discipline. I learned really fast that if you did what you were told and you tried to be the best soldier you could possibly be, you would get elevated. You get promotions, and promotions meant extra money. So, I made it to, the rank of sergeant. I was doing phenomenal. I mean, I just graduated airborne school, sapper school. And then I got a green to gold scholarship. My company commander thought that I would be a decent officer. So he put me in for a green to gold scholarship and it got accepted. So I got out and was able to go to college for 4 years to receive my bachelor's degree. And upon the receipt of my bachelor's degree, I also was commissioned a second lieutenant, went back in as an officer, and luckily went right back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I spent the majority of my career. And I had a phenomenal career. When I decided to retire, I had just been selected for promotion to lieutenant colonel, but I went ahead and chose to retire as a major because you had to do another 3 years to retire at that rank. And I had already spent so much time in Iraq, Afghanistan. I did a year in Korea there. I mean, it was just so much time away from my kids and my wife. And I just got to the point where I was like, if I do another 3 years, I may retire as a lieutenant colonel, but by the time I retire, my son's going to be out of high school, right, and I have literally no time with him.
How many kids do you have?
Well, I had 2 kids until literally about 8 months ago, and I found out that I had a third child that was 27 years old through Ancestry.com.
First of all, I'm really glad that you said it that way. When you said I had 2 kids, I was sure my daughter's coming to get the dog.
It's okay. No, I was very pleased. I couldn't be happier. Yeah, I couldn't be happier. My cousin called me and said a young lady reached out to him because he showed up on her Ancestry.com as her second cousin. So he contacted me and I asked him some questions and he mentioned the mother's name. And I was like, ooh, I remember her back in the day.
Oh, so, Richard.
Yeah.
That is, please, a story for another day. Maybe she'll want to join you and we could tell the whole story. My best friend.
Let's do it.
My best friend found out who his dad was when he was 10 years old and has a great relationship with him.
This has been great. I love her. She's wonderful. I'm gonna get her back to school and get her RN license. And I fell in love with her the moment I met her.
What a story. Wow, that's wonderful. And there's probably just so much to explore there. But I want to stay, and I hope we can talk again because I'm really enjoying this already.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot, just talking to you. What was your, if you don't mind, your service like in Iraq and Afghanistan? What was your job? What did you do? What did you see? What did that experience teach you?
Well, I'm a combat soldier. So even as an officer, we're out there with our troops. I ran a combat security team in Iraq. So we basically would get calls from units, and they would say, hey, this colonel wants to be transported from Baghdad to Tikrit. And my job was to take him from Baghdad to Tikrit. And, it is what it is. We wasn't trying to win hearts and minds. We went from A to B. And if you got in our way, then we used rules of engagement and we did what we had to do. When I was in Afghanistan, I was a security forces assistant team chief. I had 8 police stations that I was responsible for. And over there, I was outside the wire with just me, my sergeant first class that was with me. I had a mechanic and an interpreter, and we would be 100 miles away from the nearest American. Usually in uniform? Always in uniform. Full combat gear. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had to be. I mean, it was Afghanistan was probably the most vulnerable that I was. I was almost captured at one point by about 60 Taliban fighters. We were 5 minutes away from that. It was really tough. It was really, really tough. We couldn't let anybody know that we were coming because we couldn't trust that they wouldn't sell us out to the Taliban. Sure. So your job, what were you doing? What was that mission about? 8 police stations? That mission was about basically working with the police, equipping the police, and basically working with them to be able to defend themselves when the Taliban came. Yeah. And I will tell you, it's been pretty tough. I watched literally about 3 weeks ago a checkpoint that I helped build fall to the Taliban. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's tough. I've been writing letters for 11 years to help my interpreters. I've got 5 interpreters that are in America right now, but one of my interpreters is still in Afghanistan trying to get out in Kabul. He can't even get to the airport. I got another interpreter who lives in Arizona, but for 4 years, they have denied his wife and 2-year-old child the ability to join him in America. And I am livid at that, because who does that? Who denies somebody their wife and child to be able to join them in this country? So I want to dig a little deeper into your thoughts on Afghanistan. Because it's really why I finally reached out to you. You're one of those guys that other people have told me, hey, you should have this guy on. Lots of people, lots of listeners. And then for whatever reason, I never just reach out or did. We exchanged, I think whatever. I didn't give it. Finally see you tweeting about Afghanistan. I was like, I really want to talk to Richard about this specifically. Yeah. But before we get into that, I mean, I still want to understand a little bit more about your, like, kind of the domestic politics that you've gotten involved with as well, because the threat that we're being told was always going to come out of Afghanistan is something that we could discuss. But the real threat seems to be here at home with domestic terrorism, which is what you've been watching a lot of. So if I can come back to your opinions on Afghanistan, I really just have to ask you this one question about your thoughts about America, the way we are now, folks in West Virginia, and the issues of domestic drama and violence here at home. Yeah, the domestic issue in this country is the most dangerous thing that we face. I have no fear of the Taliban ever making it to the United States of America, and I don't care what anybody has to say about that. We're over there building roads in Afghanistan, and those people over there have a donkey. But over here in America, we have allowed misinformation. We have allowed these QAnon jackaloons to spew this garbage. And what's sad is that so many people have picked this up and have believed this. People are dying because they don't want to get vaccinated because of misinformation. We've got people that are trying to take up arms and go at this government because their horse lost in the race. And why did their horse lose? Because Donald Trump made 1,000 promises and didn't follow through with none of them. He didn't save the coal industry in West Virginia. He didn't have those people in the auto industry in Ohio working their asses off. That didn't happen. Donald Trump made all these promises and failed to follow through. And I don't understand how so many people in this country could still not say that's why he lost. Well, you would understand more than most of us would understand. You're a Democrat in West Virginia. So you talk to these folks, these are your people, these are your family, your neighbors. Tell me about that conversation. How do you try to convince them of anything from
the election wasn't, rigged. There aren't security issues with our elections, to get vaccinated. Like, what are the issues that you argue with these folks with, and what resonates, what works? Because I'm sure a lot of them, I'm sure you've turned a lot of people around. I'm sure, given your story and your integrity, that a lot of people trust you. So what works, and why can't you turn everybody around down there, Richard?
Yeah, I do a nightly live for an hour every single night from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And I try to talk about—
Where do you do that? How can people find it? Sorry.
It's on Facebook. It's on Twitter. It's on YouTube.
Okay.
I do an hour every night to try to talk to folks. And, where I'm from, it's almost impossible. I mean, these people, they don't want to get vaccinated. They are falling for the misinformation that it's a microchip. I mean, goodness gracious, if you've got one of these in your pocket, and everybody does, which is a cell phone, the government knows exactly where you are and what you're doing. I mean, that right there, if anything. But, these people are refusing to get vaccinated. I'm trying to explain to them that we will never get past this situation until we get herd immunity, until people do the right thing. I mean, even Donald Trump said to booing crowds, go ahead and get the vaccine. And that right there is because you can't feed somebody misinformation for 2 years and then tell them to get vaccinated. But there's a lot of people in this country right now that just refuse to do the right thing. And these hospitals are filled to capacity. And now it's going to be to the point where if you get sick, somebody's going to have to die before you get help. And it's probably going to be you. And, what can you do? I can't convince these people that Donald Trump won the election fair and square. They just refuse to believe that. And, there's nothing that you can do. I'm almost at the point now where I feel that, these people— this is the fault of a failed education system that teaches the exam instead of teaching these people to think critical. And that's the problem that we have in this country today. And it's absolutely sickening.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I know that you were involved with the teacher strike there, which was successful beyond what even my union teacher friends thought would be successful. So I think that's a huge achievement that you were a supporter and participant in. But I think that even if you had a great education and you had kind of a set of critical thinking skills, and even if you understood civics, which is, I think, what you'd probably be getting at talking about education, it's still the other issue which you spoke to, which was misinformation. As long as you have major corporate media networks, much less independent people doing, huge shows on independent channels from YouTube to social medias, et cetera, those people are delivering a kind of thing that, even if you're educated, man, that sounds pretty believable. That's pretty scary.
No, you're absolutely right, and that is a major problem. Is why are we allowing news agencies to absolutely push complete misinformation? And then another part of this is racism. These are people that you have problems in your life. Let's blame the immigrants. Believe it or not, when I ran in 2018, one of the biggest problems in West Virginia when you polled the people was the caravan. People from Guatemala walking to the southern border was the biggest problem that West Virginia faced. I mean, do you think these people are going to walk all the way here and take your coal jobs that are already dying? I mean, and literally, and then when Donald Trump come down here, I was actually ahead in the polls. This was an R plus 54. I was making history here. And Donald Trump come down here twice in the last daggone month and mentioned my name in the Hispanic way. And these people was like, oh, that guy's, he's Mexican. He must be part of that caravan. And my numbers went, tanked. Yeah, I was ahead.
No way. I'm gonna try to find that audio if you have.
Oh, you can. Yeah, the audio's there. Yes.
No, I'll throw it on this podcast. Yeah. And if it wasn't so terrifying, it would be hilarious. Yeah. But I can only imagine.
That's the thing. That was the problem.
Well, I'm super glad that you made the point about the racism, the xenophobia, the concern of the other, all of that takes place in West Virginia. So I was just talking to this guy. You ever heard of this guy, Matt Jones? He's a Kentucky sports radio guy.
No.
Okay, so he's really interesting. We had a great conversation. I'd love to get you and him together because he's a very progressive guy. He wrote a book very critical of Mitch McConnell. He almost ran for Senate there, but he mostly does Kentucky sports. But he's telling me, Richard, about how poor white folks in Appalachia think and feel, and that arrogant liberals like me don't know how to communicate with them. And my defense of that is I grew up in a fairly poor white area. My mom grew up in a really poor white area. I do understand what they think and why they think it. I do feel like I know how to communicate with them. But putting that aside, he makes the point about communication. And I argue with him, Richard, it's about the misinformation, but it's also about the racism. So my question to you, and sorry for talking so long, but my question to you is, what would you say to a poor white person who suffers from all kinds of poverty-related issues, drugs, mental illness, obesity, just lack of health care, education, opportunity, all of it, all the horror, environmental issues? That person's broken, and because the system is broken. But what would you say to them? Well, what do they think about Black folks and immigrants and so on? And what's that conversation like, the difference between poor white and poor Black?
That's right now, I've been working with the Poor People's Campaign, and Reverend Barber's coming down here. We're getting ready to do a couple events at the end of this month.
Great.
And the thing about it is that, guess what? It's not just the Black people that are poor, the immigrants that are poor. You're poor too. You're poor too. There's not opportunities coming here. Our elected officials aren't fighting for capabilities and fighting for money to come to these areas. They're absolutely selling us out, and they come down here and right before the election, and they act like they care, and then they disappear and we don't see them again. What got Donald Trump was Donald Trump come down here and he made promises to these poor people, put on that coal miner's cap and said he was going to save coal, which he did not. But also, the mere fact that he hates the same people that they hate. And really, they don't even know these people. I come from a state where it's 98.6% white. These people don't really know other cultures and people of other race, creeds, and colors. They really don't. But they will absolutely take that fight and say, that's why. That's why I'm poor. That's why I don't have anything. That's why I wasn't able to go to college, because of immigrants, because of oh shoot, what is it called? When a person uses their color to get where they say they use their
affirmative action.
Affirmative action. They blame affirmative action. It's all garbage. You're poor. You're poor because of where you come from. You're poor because there's no capabilities. And you're poor because you keep selecting people that represent you that don't represent you, that only look at this as a political paycheck for them. And that's it. And that's where we're at. And that's why we struggle.
Whew. I knew talking to you was going to be good. I just didn't know where we go and how good. All right, so I got to let you go in a minute here, but I do want to ask you, you mentioned this a couple of times. I think this is one of the most interesting and fascinating things. If I promise you a job and then the job never comes and then I'm gone, I leave, I lose, whatever, at some point you decide, well, that job's not coming. But why don't you blame me if I promised you a job? The point being, whether it's QAnon theory or the my pillow guy saying Trump's going to be back, at some point experts say at some point when something you're told, a prophecy or a promise doesn't happen, that sometimes breaks people out of the cult or believing and supporting someone. So the question I'm getting at with the coal industry and the promise dying mainly because of competition, really more than anything else. But with the coal industry dying and Donald Trump putting his cape on, said, I'm going to save it, not saving it. What did that do? What did that change, if anything?
It changed nothing.
Why?
Nothing. And the reason why is because that's what these people are used to. Everybody comes down here and looks these coal miners in the face and says, I'm going to protect coal. I'm going to bring coal back. And these people, because that's all they got. You don't have to have a college degree to be a coal miner. You don't even have to have a high school diploma to be a coal miner. And oh, by the way, that coal miner is making sometimes 6 figures a year. So that person right there doesn't want to hear anything other than I'm going to protect your job, because he knows that when that job disappears, he will never in his life ever be able to find another occupation that will absolutely pay him that kind of money with the lack of education that they have. And look, I'm not calling coal miners stupid. I'm just saying that most people around here, when they graduate high school, they walk straight into that mine. And that's how it's always been.
Well, and to be, be clear, A lot of people don't want to go to college and get the types of jobs that college offers. A lot of people love working with their hands and being on a rig or on a tractor or in a field. I do.
You're right. But the thing about it is that then let's focus on bringing other jobs here. We need to hold our elected officials accountable to bring those green energy jobs.
So that's my question. So even if you took, my question is kind of like, there's a cognitive dissonance. Even if you went up to this coal miner and said, you make $150,000 a year in a coal mine, which is dangerous, as you know, which is unhealthy, as you know, which is time consuming. We're going to give you a job putting up solar panels or windmills. You're going to make a little less or even the same, but you're going to work way less and it's way safer. And we got great benefits. And what would they say? Because there's a cultural attachment that we all have to a nostalgic job and industry or whatever, and what it provided, the camaraderie. You know this about the military. So what would happen if that happened? And is there an example that's similar to that where?
No, yes. Let me tell you something. First and foremost, we've been trying this for years now in West Virginia. The problem is you have the Friends of Coal that aren't Friends of Coal Miners and the Coal Association that tell all these people right off the beginning, if they bring solar panels to West Virginia, you will lose your job, and they're lying to you. They're not going to pay you these things. They're the ones that are pushing this misinformation, and they're the ones that give these campaign contributions to all of these people in the State House, and they absolutely will do everything in their power to keep capabilities out, because as long as the Friends of Coal and the Coal Association are writing checks, they will continue going down this path. We could save the people of West Virginia if we brought good capabilities here. We have the most beautiful state in the country. This place could be a tourist, absolutely paradise. There's a lot of things we could do. Green energy jobs pay more than coal jobs do, but the problem is that there's people that are still making a lot of money on coal, and they want to keep it going as long as they can.
Your state coal industry did outside of the humanitarian disaster and environmental disaster, one of the saddest things to me was when I read about mountaintop removal in a long form investigative journalism article in Vanity Fair, maybe like 2007 or something. And then I started looking up all the images, and they take the mountain.
Looks like the backside of the moon.
Right. And they take the mountain off to get easier.
And here's what they do. But here's what you got to know. Here's what they do. They do that, and then they file bankruptcy, and they don't have to go back and clean their mess up. And that's how come if you fly over West Virginia, it's here, it's there, it's everywhere. They cut the tops of these mountains off, they get everything from it, and then they file bankruptcy, and they leave like a thief in the night, and they get away with it.
You know who else did that for his entire life? Well, the point is, you got all those awful, ugly mountain towns. Why not just cover them with solar panels?
Exactly. Windmills. Let's do it.
I love talking to you. I know you got to go. Let's please do it again very soon. Thank you so much for all of your work and your voice. And I really appreciate. I'm so glad we finally connected, man.
Let's do it, Pete. Appreciate it, brother.